Hey dudes and dudettes, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Be Kind and Rewind podcast. A podcast chock full of everything that is nostalgic about the 80s, 90s, and more. This episode, we're strapping on our proton packs, firing up the thermal cameras to dive into the world of paranormal investigations with ghost hunter, filmmaker, and host of Dead Explorer web series, Alejandro Dominguez. So, welcome, Alejandro.
Hey Carlos, what's up? It's a pleasure to be on.
Pleasure. Thanks for taking the time to be on. Like I was just telling you, I checked out some of the videos before up on YouTube, like everyone should go check out, and so those top videos will get you ready for that next season that's coming up. But before we get into Dead Explorer, tell us a little bit about yourself before you got into Dead Explorer.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I'm like your show. Somebody's always grown up really big into horror movies in the 80s and 90s. I grew up. Those were my prime years growing up. So, big filmmaking fan. I first got into filmmaking as a little kid. We would make homemade movies, usually parodies of Star Trek or whatever movie was popular at the time. And so I'm just this big film geek. And now I have this YouTube web series that I've had for about 6 years now called Dead Explorer. Where I go out with my friends all over the United States looking for ghosts.
Yeah, and so if those who go check out the YouTube channel, you have the video there, and kind of gives you a little quick backstory. So it says that you saw ghosts when you were 5 years old, and that kind of led to your your infatuation with the paranormal. Like myself, you have like an experience, and you're just kind of launched into it. So is that the main thing that got Dead Explorer, or is it just a mixture of your filmmaking and your curiousness for the paranormal?
Yeah, that's definitely a great way to explain it because it is both. It's one of those things where, like you said, when I was a small boy, I'm originally from Mexico, and when I was in my grandparents' house around 4 or 5 years old, I saw the face of a woman looking through a window, which was impossible because we were it was an apartment, so we were about 3 or 4 stories, up, and so that was the moment that really just stuck with me and made me curious about the paranormal. And then just when I saw people were doing it on television, I was like, wow, people do that. I don't know why it never dawned on me that people actually went out looking for ghosts, and not only went looking for them, tried to film them. And I said, that's something I gotta try. So it was one of those where I became a fan of the paranormal shows because of my experience as a kid, but at the same time the paranormal shows were the inspiration for me to try to take my film background and try to capture stuff for myself.
Well, cool, yeah, and that all kind of leads into one thing, like you said, you had the filmmaking experience, you had the curiousness, and the experience as well. So, like, getting into Dead Explorer, so when you got it all started, like you said, you've seen it on TV. How did you get your team together? How did you form the ground floor in regards to your team with Dead Explorer?
Oh, Carlos, it was really just organic. There was really not much of a plan. I just started first by, actually the first one we did, it was right after going out drinking on a Halloween.
You broke into a warehouse all drunken and stuff. Like, there's got to be ghosts in here.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, no breaking into a warehouse, obviously, but we went out to a cemetery. And it was just because we'd been drinking a couple pops and said, you know what, let's go do it. And so it was never a master plan. The crazy thing about the web series, if people go check it out, I mean, it has close to 40,000 subscribers on YouTube and 10,000 more fans on Facebook. But none of it was planned. It was just something that it came from just wanting to do it. I wanted to have fun. And as far as, how I investigate with people, I actually don't have a set team. It's always been about just doing it with friends. So one thing is from seasons 1 through 6, it's just people that I've met on the internet, fans, friends, you name it, people that I connect with and go out ghost hunting. And so it's always been about keeping it real, which is different from what people see on TV, because on TV, some of it's scripted, some of it's not. I'm not really going to get too much into that because I think there's a time and place for all that type of stuff, and I love the shows. But definitely for myself, it's always been, keeping it real.
So you're saying there's a chance for me to be on the show? You got friends and family and people of networking on the show. There's a chance then. If you do one out in the Colorado area, I'm on it. I'm not going to say I'm the bravest,
what part
but
of Colorado are you in, Carlos?
I'm in Denver, so I'm willing to travel out.
I'll be there next week.
For real? Let's do it.
I am there next week.
Really? Which what spot are you doing out here?
I'm headed towards Estes Park, so I gotta go check out
The
the.
Stanley?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, awesome. Well, we might have to work something out. I'm not gonna lie, we might have to work something out. But that's awesome. Like you said, it's an organic thing. You don't have a set team, but you kind of gathered all your instruments. So like, what was that kind of like? Did you kind of go off on what you seen on TV? You did your own research on what instruments you knew you needed to start out.
Yeah, that's a great question because that's something I really had to kind of figure out as I was going through it. So really, like what got me really, really serious is that after I put up those videos on my YouTube channel, and at that time my YouTube channel was just where I was putting up, still, just making random videos like as a kid. But now YouTube is this new thing where you can put videos about stuff. So I was putting videos about zombies and classic video games and parkour, whatever stuff I thought was cool. And this real paranormal group out of Arizona, SAGAP, Southern Arizona Ghost and Paranormal Society, saw that video, the one at the cemetery that was just total crap. And they reached out to me and said, hey, man, come out to Tombstone to do an investigation with us. And so I went out to Arizona, kind of like I said, I'm going to be in Colorado next week. And I went to Arizona because they invited me, and I was like, wow, these people do it for real. So like this is the next thing that kind of opened my eyes. At first it was the TV shows, but now seeing people doing that in real life that are real serious and real legit, and just following those opportunities is kind of like what started getting me into it and learning about it and learning what I'm interested in. And then as far as equipment and stuff like that, that's just something that over time I just kind of became familiar with more and more equipment, and I just picked and choose what I thought was worth using because some of it's kind of cheesy, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, that was one thing I wanted to ask. Was like, I know, of course, when you see on TV, you're like, oh yeah, like they make it seem like every instrument that they use is working, but I know, I'm sure like the EVPs might pick up more than some other things, or thermal cameras or things like that. So I know it's a user's choice, I guess, to some degree. But kind of going back to like your selection process, when you talked about you may get invited from another team, but how do you research your next location that you're going to go on to, or you're going to shoot an episode there?
It's definitely a mixture of research, just finding places. Either, the internet's a great place to find lots of information. So there's definitely no shortage of finding locations, just searching for them online. But then people do reach out to me, and, it's fans that have something they want to recommend for me to check out. Friends and family who know about this web series I got, so they say, hey, I have this place I work at, or I have a relative who works at this place. So it's always been kind of a combination of going to some of those places that everybody knows of, that are on the TV shows, like the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, but then places that nobody knows about, just either local legends or places that you only find out about if somebody reaches out to you and invites you.
Well, cool. So it's just a mixture of things that, like you said, organically, just like how the team comes together. This is how you find the next location. Is either somebody invites you, or you happen to find something cool online. Now, when you do find something, do you have to reach out like to the owner and just like, hey, I'm gonna set up this time and location, or if you are just like, hey, we're gonna come visit, we might do some filming kind of thing. How does that go down?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously it's much easier when you get invited because then, they definitely are interested in what you're doing. They want you to try to document something they're experiencing, to sometimes give them validation or to help them kind of debunk the idea that it might be something paranormal. But as far as reaching out to the places, yeah, you always have to reach out. I mean, I'm not going to go in any place without anybody's permission. Last thing I would do is trespass. And so when you reach out to somebody, I mean, these places that are famous for it, it's usually pretty easy because they've kind of created a business out of it, to tell you the truth. They have fees that they charge, and they have calendars that are booked in advance. And
so they have their own department like dedicated to answering those calls.
Yeah, for sure. Some of these places, they've made a whole industry out of it, which, has its pros and cons, you know what I mean? But, and so, you just got to reach out to them. And for those who are new to it, you kind of have to convince them that you're legit and that you're not going to be there messing with their stuff or messing with their mojo, because the last thing you want to do is go somewhere upset some kind of spirit, and then you get to leave, but then the owner has to stay there, with this angry spirit because you went there and did something you shouldn't have done.
Yeah, no, that's true. Especially going to be there overnight. They got to trust you enough to leave you there with all their merchandise or at least their property overnight. So yeah, it's a trust factor for sure. So at all the locations so far that you've been to, what's the one that you'd say stood out the most?
I have a couple of favorites. One of the ones I did last year was the Ohio State Reformatory, which as a film fan is really cool place to investigate because that's where they filmed Shawshank Redemption. So you go inside this jail and just you recognize places where they filmed scenes from the movie. In fact, some of the stuff that they filmed in Shawshank Redemption that are supposed to take place outside of the prison, they actually build those sets inside the prison as well. So you can go through there and you find, the apartment that Morgan Freeman went to live in after he got out of jail and was working at the grocery store. Yeah, it's inside the Ohio State Reformatory. But then, the stuff that happened there was really cool too, man, because, these jail cells, these big, heavy doors that take a lot of effort were being slammed shut. We got some crazy EVPs, and we had this crazy thing with a motion detector that, on the surface, can be debunked as a coincidence, but it's like the only time in 6 years where I've ever had a motion detector go off and I've said, hey, that's actually really interesting.
I mean, it takes a lot to set those things off, not just like a little smoke or something. It takes a little substance to set those things off. So yeah, I did you guys get the fresh fish chant going while you're there? Fresh fish, fresh fish. Nothing like that going down while you guys were...
We should have, right?
Yeah, you have to reenact a couple scenes.
You have to, it's funny because they have cutouts of Andy and the different actors, like life-size cutouts throughout the jail. So we did snap a couple selfies, with the characters from the movie.
They're like the old school movie theater cardboard cutouts they have around. Is that what it is?
Yeah, like life-size too. So you're like, Tim
Andy,
Robbins a real tall dude.
He was like 6'6". Yeah, he's tall as hell.
Yeah, and I'm 6'3", so when I stand next to it, I was like, okay, this is a tall guy. And then they got Morgan Freeman, and he's this itty bitty cutout, so obviously he's an itty bitty guy.
So that was one. What was another one that stood out to you?
Two of my other personal favorites is probably one, the USS Hornet, which is this battleship in Alameda, California, just outside of the Bay of San Francisco. It was the most haunted ship in the Navy. It killed the most World War II Japanese fighter planes, and they also had the most suicides of any ship in the Navy. So it's got this really crazy mixture of energy there, and it's just a really cool place to investigate because it's like going through kind of like this living museum, naval museum, and then Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. It's a crazy sanatorium. You can just imagine, like if you ever watched HS Asylum, that's basically like investigating a place like that.
Really?
So that was super creepy.
Yeah, it seems like out of your experience, what would you say? What types of buildings or types of areas have the most hauntings? Like there's the asylums, there's the old ships, and then there's just like maybe the old schools or something like that, or hospitals. Which one do you think like maybe usually has the most or the most common?
Jails definitely tend to have a lot of activity.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the jails I've been to, big and small, all seem to really have at least EVPs, which is the most common type of evidence. Is EVPs is where you record voices with a digital recorder.
So when you're setting something up, you're going to a jail. You're like, yes, we're gonna get some good stuff. We go to a jail.
Jails are great. And then down in Texas, I live in Austin, so I get to go down to the areas near the border of Texas and Mexico, and that's like going to a whole different place as well. That whole area where it's kind of like it's stuck in time. There's areas out there that they haven't really moved on, and so there's a lot of the old grandparents folklore type stuff going on there still. And
the chupacabra, they still got the chupacabra stories going on.
And then the brujas and all the kind of stuff that your grandparents would tell you about. That stuff still happens there. It's kind of funny. It's kind of like you out there, and there's not so many modern things, so you kind of pick up on some of this old school stuff down there. So it's definitely kind of like a real haunted place. So anything along the border is usually really haunted as well.
Yeah, I actually, it's funny you say that. I have most of my family lives down in the valley, down in like Brownsville and McAllen, down there by Padre. So I definitely know, like, once you get south of San Antonio and Austin, like once you like, there's it's just like its own little country down there. It's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre towns, like left and right that you're going by. So yeah, it's interesting. It definitely is. I'm sure there's plenty of places because I always drive by barns, empty barns and stuff like that. You're like, oh, it's definitely haunted, just by the looks, judging by a book by its cover. But yeah, so kind of going into some of the places that you've been to. What are like some of the most like benevolent or malevolent experience you've had? Like some of the good and some of the bad that you've dealt with.
Well, like from each extreme, it's very rare to get something that's really hardcore or the opposite of that. But obviously the most hardcore instance I ever had was actually at jail, Gonzales County Jail, where I went in with one of my investigator buddies, and it looked like he was being attacked by a spirit, like something was choking him, grabbing him around the neck because he was having a hard time breathing, literally killing over. I mean, we caught it all on camera, and when we rushed him outside to try to get him fresh air or just get him out of the situation, his eyes were bloodshot red, and there were tears running down his face. So that
Yeah.
was a really super creepy moment for sure.
No, I watched that video and I saw it and I was just like he couldn't even respond to you. Like he like it's like when you have like something holding your Adam's apple or something, you just can't respond. You just like panic mode. Got to get out, figure out a way to get some air. And like you said, when he got outside and you could see his eyes just like bloodshot and like just like the fear and like that panic mode in his face, like that was for real. Like he something had a hold of him.
Yeah, he was scared, and it was scary. Even if you don't want to dismiss the paranormal part, and people watch that clip and they can make up their own minds. They weren't there, and in the end, it's not really evidence. It doesn't prove that there's ghosts. But just on the surface, just for what it's worth, it was a scary experience. You don't know if you're having a medical emergency with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been back to that jail several times over the last 3 or 4 years, and every time I go there, something happens. So actually, about 2 years ago, I went and filmed this pretty in-depth documentary, and one of the people I interviewed was Dr. David Horton, who was the professor of forensics for the state of Texas. Or
Nice.
he was a professor of forensics at St. Edward's, but he was on the chair of forensics for the state of Texas. That's the correct thing to say. So he's the top forensics expert in the whole state. And I showed him the footage of Jay being attacked, just trying to say, hey, this supposedly they hung people there. Is he being hung? Is there a noose around his neck? He's like, no, it's not a noose, because when somebody dies from a noose, it actually snaps their necks. People think that nooses are supposed to choke people,
Yeah, it's just snapping that
but,
neck.
but they're actually supposed to snap the neck instantly, and then you die instantly. So there's not supposed to be a choking part of it. But he said when he saw it, it did look like somebody who showed the signs of being a choking victim.
Hmm.
So I showed it to this professor, thinking I was actually hoping he was going to tell me, nah, he's faking.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's
Because
just nothing.
there was a part of me that kind of would say, okay, I want to close the chapter on this because it's been bothering me forever. Was Jay really attacked? Because I don't know. He says he was. He believes he was, but I don't have any proof, and that's what drives me crazy. So I wanted to show him the clip, saying, "Okay, give me something." And instead, he just turned it around on me, and instead of being like, "No, it's not an attack," he says it does look like an attack. So what the hell does that mean now? But it really was validation for Jay, because Jay, said I felt like I was being choked, and here's this professor and top chairperson for the whole state of Texas saying it looks like he's getting choked.
I mean, it sounds legit at that point, and like the video evidence, me seeing his face, you could see it just like in his as soon as it started, he leaned over. It's like, oh man, he's sounded like I thought he was gonna throw up. I didn't know what was gonna happen, so it was definitely a
Right.
scary moment for sure. So what was like maybe more of a benevolent, like a nicer thing that happened? Like, just did a ghost open a door for you or something like that? Anything?
Well, I guess just going full circle on that, and then maybe one other story. One of the times I did go there, tried to go in the same room that Jay got attacked. It kind of there was this feeling like there was somebody sat in there. So I know here we go from one extreme of like this guy being choked, and then to another end, saying this is just a feeling thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it really felt like there was somebody sad in there. So that was kind of weird. I thought there was going to be always something evil in there, but just like just got this gut feeling, and that doesn't happen very often. But a cool story is, and in one of these top 5 episodes from season 2, these little snippet trailers have been dropped into T season 6 that comes out this Saturday. We captured the voice of a little girl talking on the USS Hornet, and she
That was
says,
pretty clear too.
"Do you want to play with me?" Yeah, a little girl being sweet saying, "Do you want to play with me?" And as clear as you and me talking, right, Carlos? Because you heard the clip, and I think when people hear it, they'll realize, oh, the thing about that clip is we used zero audio manipulation. We didn't have to enhance the audio. We didn't have to clean it up. We didn't have to put it through a editor to make a voice come out of it. We had to do absolutely nothing. There's a little girl on a record and say, "Would you like to play with me?" Just as sweet as can be, but still kind of creepy because why is there a little girl on the USS Hornet? But that was
crazy how loud it was and clear, and like you guys couldn't hear it unless it was through the recorder, and it's just like you wonder how many frequencies and voices we're not hearing. On a daily basis. So yeah, definitely those are some cool videos so far that I've checked out that definitely everyone should go check out. So kind of getting into some of the overall experiences, like when you go to these haunted places, either it's a ship or warehouse or a hospital. Have you ever had the situation where a ghost came home with you? Activity followed you home?
Luckily, as far as I can tell, it hasn't. There's been a couple of times where I wondered, like I just see something out of the corner of my eye and I wonder if I did or not. But a big part of the whole paranormal experience is perception is reality. And a lot of times we have all these great stories that we've been talking about, Carlos, but the flip side of it is that there's times that you go out and you talk to people, and a lot of times I get the feeling that what they think is happening is all in their head. And, so as far as anything in my own house, I basically choose to believe there's nothing in my house. Just as kind of like
just
protection.
Ease of mind. Ease of mind.
Because for what I do and all the places I've been doing, and I've been doing this for over 5 years, and I've been over 50 places, some of them multiple times. You kind of need to have something that keeps you safe, in one way or another. And so for me, I try, when it comes to my home, I personally try to choose to believe that there's nothing there. Although there's been a couple times I've wondered.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things that's hard for you to control, because sometimes some people say they follow you because either you had they had a certain connection with you, or maybe you irked them the wrong way and they attached themselves to you to now torment you as opposed to whoever they were before. So yeah, it is one of those things that you just kind of never know. But like you said, as long as you have the ease of mind, say there's nothing behind me, you're good.
Right, because you start wondering, right? You start wondering, is there something there? Is there something there? And then your mind starts filling in the gaps with its imagination. So I don't even leave my mind do that. But, I have friends, other investigators who claim, the best story I heard is from my buddy Harvey, who's done some of these investigations with me. He's from the Valley. And, he said that one time a little girl came home and he could hear her giggle. He could see a shadow of a little girl every once in a while against the wall. And so he said that he finally just said, "Okay, it's time for you to go back home." Mm-hmm. And so he told her to get back in his truck, and he drove. I don't know where he said he picked her up from. Somewhere like, I think Helotes, is that down there in the valley?
Maybe.
And he told her to get out, and then he drove back home. She says that after that she was gone. So he literally drove her back to where she came from and said, "You guys stay. Peace out."
Hey, he did it the most logical way you can think of. Well, she probably came in my van, so I'm going to take her back in my van. So it's just crazy that she followed him out the door, into the car, and out to, back to her spot. So, yeah, those things are just to think about, a little off-putting that something like that could follow you home and, be part of your life at that point in time. So, kind of going on some more about your investigations, what is like the most common thing that you say you would see? Like, do you see like orbs, shadows, voices, or like moving objects? Like, what's something that happens the most or that you enjoy getting or seeing?
Yeah, well, there's definitely the most common evidence is going to be the audio evidence, because for whatever reason, capturing voices seems to be like the easiest thing to do. But as far as experiences, as far as what I've seen, I've described two basically the most common experience are either I'll see a light flash. So it's not an orb per se, because when people talk about orbs who watch the ghost hunting shows or do the paranormal, they're talking about something they see on a playback on a video.
Mm-hmm.
This is something where you actually see a flash of light right in real time without any equipment. And so, that actually goes back to the legends of the jack-o'-lanterns. The reason why we have jack-o'-lanterns on Halloween, with the candles and the little head or the little pumpkin, is because back in Ireland, they used to call them jack-o'-wisps. And they used to have the legends about the glowing light balls that would, show up and disappear. So what used to be an old Celtic legend, we now use as jack-o'-lanterns on Halloween.
Well, now I know.
And now you know. And so that orb has been spotted by people for centuries, in real time, that light flashing before your eyes. And I've seen that not very often, but 2 or 3 times. And every time I've seen it, I recognize it for what it is. So there's really no explanation. It's like if somebody just flashed a camera in front of you, but obviously there's no camera.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not, like something out of a movie where you see like, Ghostbusters, like you mentioned Ghostbusters intro. Yeah, or Slimer, it's not Slimer.
Yeah.
But, you do see these little light orbs. And then the other thing you'll see is kind of like a dark figure with no legs and no arms and really no real visible features. But that's something I've seen before, either a black version of that or a white version of that, where this basically formless mass, but it is a mass, just no legs, kind of hovering, and you usually see it very, very fast. It doesn't stay still very long.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, as crazy as it sounds, and believe me, I started off as a skeptic, even though I had experience as a kid. I wanted to debunk a lot of this stuff, but over the years I realized that as much of the stuff I can debunk, there's stuff like these experiences I'm describing to you that when you're there, they're real to you.
Yeah, I mean, with your own 2 eyes, and you see like like you said, a ball of energy, black or a light color. You're just like, I'm seeing what I'm seeing, and if there's no explanation, then yeah, if you're a skeptic, it's hard for you to talk yourself out of that situation to believing what is actually happening in front of you. And for me, like I said, I've had a few experiences in my life, but I'm a believer to full degree, but there's still things that people put up on YouTube and things like that. You're just like, nah, that can't happen, or I don't believe that. But when you do see these things like the shadows and the orb like that, what are you usually doing? What tactics are you usually to like get their attention, or is it something that just kind of organically happens? You just happen to catch it.
Yeah, that's basically what happens, because for all your best efforts and attempts to try to capture things or get something to respond to you, a lot of the best stuff happens, outside of your control.
Mm-hmm.
So, when those things happen, yeah, everybody sees the shows. They're like, why do they never capture that stuff, on camera? It's because you're pointing a camera in one direction, just choosing a spot that you're hoping at this specific moment as I'm filming this, something might happen there. And usually it's just whatever direction I'm looking. And then, something happens in a totally different direction that you're just never going to be able to capture. So one of the cool things I started doing last year is I started shooting with 360-degree video. So last year I had about 5 or 6 videos, and one of them was actually back at the Gonzales County Jail where Jay got choked, where I've set up these 360-degree cameras. So if you have your VR viewer, you can watch the investigation in a 360 mode.
Which is awesome.
And so the thing I'm hoping is that, those things I described to you are really rare. I mean, it's great to tell you. You asked me what's the coolest thing I've seen, and I can tell you, and it's definitely awesome, but it's really, really rare. I don't want to give people the false impression that I see that stuff all the time. So, I've used this 360 camera, and so far I haven't had those things happen again. But next time they do, hopefully that 360 camera is filming, because that captures video from all directions at the same time. And I hope that will increase the odds that I finally will capture something like that on video.
I bet it's exhilarating and life draining watching the 360 video, like the 20 however many hours you have to watch, like all angles to see. Did I see something? Did I just see something? I don't know.
Well, usually what happens is, yeah, you can go back and review the evidence, but typically, as you're investigating, like the things I described, like the light flashing, I'll remember when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, usually if the instantaneous that we capture on video and you try to figure that out right there on the spot. But on the 360 video, it'll be even better because now we can definitely go back and say, okay, let's go to that exact moment that we thought we saw that and see if it's there.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's why I wasn't sure how that went down. If you had to just basically watch the whole thing, like if you weren't in a room that you had a camera in, so you just had to watch it, for the
on the 360 video. On the 360 video, it's like watching any video. When you're editing it, it's flat, so it looks like a big old landscape from one end of your monitor to the other. So it's not really having to look at a bunch of directions. And typically when I do my video review, it's usually when I'm editing the episodes anyway. So during that time, I get to see the video, and that's a lot of times I'll find stuff that I missed while we were investigating. So it is very important to go back and, like you said, Carlos, and look for stuff. But it's not as hard. Back in the day, we used to put up like 4 static cameras and put them on a security system. Mm-hmm. And each camera would record for like 6 hours, and they would record whatever happened in the room while we weren't there, just in case something happened. But after a while, I was like, you know what, that's just too much work. I want to capture stuff, but not that bad. So I kind of let that go.
Yeah, got to adjust as time. Well, with technology gets better, it's easier to do those type of things without having to, put so much of your time watching and just looking for those little details. So, kind of the last few questions, a few things about Dead Explorer was, what would be like the craziest story that was tied to a location that you guys went to? What was like, maybe the location wasn't like the most haunted, but what was like that craziest story that was like, that really stood out to you?
Well, down in the valley in Mission, Texas, the reason why it's called Mission is they have a mission there that dates back to the French, and it's called La Lomita Mission. And so the legend of La Lomita Mission is that a priest got 2 nuns pregnant, and when he got them pregnant, he would kill the babies and bury them in the side of the mission.
I think I totally have heard this.
Yeah, so that's kind of creepy and morbid, that this priest was getting these nuns pregnant and then killing the babies and burying them, this place where people would go to church.
And there was like a big pile of baby bones right there, right?
Yeah, right. So that's kind of creepy. But, and actually when we went there, one of the things we captured was the baby crying. We heard it in real time, and then we played it back. And again, I really want people to know that are listening to this, if I haven't watched the show, that these are great stories because, they happen. But at the same time, I've been doing this over 6 years. And one of the things that I think I always try to emphasize on my show is that a lot of times nothing happens. So the entertainment is going to be learn the history, going with us to learn about the place, going with us trying to capture this stuff. Mm-hmm. But what people love about the show is that we don't fake stuff. So if we don't capture something in an investigation, we're going to say in the video, tonight, nothing got captured. And actually the most viral video I got, the one that, almost got 1 million views from one investigation alone, and also in the valley at Fort Ringgold in Rio Grande City, nice. At the end of the video, we put a little message saying, although nothing happened, staff still believes. And it only goes to show that there's people out there who want to watch these videos and don't need to have, somebody pretend that they saw something or have somebody pretend that there's something there because,
or maybe they might see something and you didn't see it. They might be investigating themselves.
Hey, you know what? Fans see stuff I miss all the time. And I'll go back and I'm like, wow, that's actually, how did I miss that? I spent all this time editing it and listening to it and watching it. And I edit it and watch the video 5 or 6 times when it's done just to make sure it's ready to upload, and then they go and capture something I didn't see or hear. So that's funny.
It's always something that gets caught. It's always the after effect. So what you just talked about leads into the last thing I wanted to kind of get into was like all the ghost hunter shows that they kind of been sprouting off for the last decade or so. We've had so many. Which ones to you are like the quality ones, and which ones are ones just basically conning everybody into watching every episode?
That's a loaded question because I have
That's
friends
true.
who've been on a lot of the shows, but
Oh, okay. Well, then I don't want you to
no,
put down
no,
on your
no, no.
friends,
I can
but
answer it. I can answer it.
all right.
The truth is, I'll tell you that almost all of them are edited
Mm-hmm.
for
I mean, if they're
effect.
if they're a reality show, they're gonna be edited or scripted to some
Yeah, no,
degree.
absolutely all of them. Now, do I have some favorites? Absolutely. Like, so when I first started watching these shows, Ghost Hunters was the first show that I can think of. I mean, there
Mm-hmm.
was Most Haunted in the UK, but
Was that the
Ghost
one with the
Hunters,
two plumbers?
yeah, the
Yeah,
plumbers.
yeah.
That's been around that show actually just finally left sci-fi after like
Really?
15 years. Yeah, they're going to go indie. I think they're going to try to go streaming or something. But and there's the show. It's actually back on TV now. Destination Truth with Josh Gates. It's actually back on the Travel Channel now.
I remember I
Uh,
watched a couple of those episodes, and it was like more of like a paranormal, like I don't know what. I mean, it had it like kind of like when I don't know. It was this different show. It was
Yeah, well, it's
more a
not
mindful
all
thing.
paranormal. Yeah, it's got cryptids and UFOs, and they travel around the world, and so it's kind of like Indiana Jonesy kind of
Mm-hmm.
style, like that whole adventure element. So to me, that show was the biggest inspiration. So when I think of Dead Explorer, and when I was trying to think of a title, I was trying to think of a title that's like, okay, I'm a guy who wants to explore and go to all these places. So to me, like Destination Truth was my biggest motivation or my inspiration, I should say. And then, Ghost Adventures when it was brand new the first couple years. But really, for the last 10 years, when, all these shows started coming out, and it seemed like one was, a rip off of the other one, they were trying to do what made one other show popular. And it seems like most of the shows just don't make it. They're on for
Yeah.
like a year and then they go away.
Or like
It's probably
the trailers for the shows are more exhilarating than the actual show because they've edited all the things that kind of happen into one little scene, and then it just gets spread out for entire episodes. It's not
Yeah.
what you think. Just like reality show, you think you're gonna get something, but it's a little bit different.
It's a tease. But Carlos, I have a buddy, Hector. He was on a show called Killer Contact, and Hector was actually on SAG Up. So I told you the story about how I got invited by this group to go to Arizona,
Hmm.
and they kind of showed me the light or showed me the way. Well, one of their members got cast on one of these shows, and so I was seeing on Facebook like, okay, Hector, he's in Transylvania. Hector's in Italy. Hector's like in some different country every week on Facebook. And this is before he could tell anybody what he was doing, right? So
Hmm.
it was super secret. You were just like, okay, what's he doing? I'm thinking he's up
He's
to
like, did he
something.
win the lottery? Something
Yeah,
happened.
yeah. I mean, I started suspecting he might be on a TV show and he hasn't told nobody. And so that show, Killer Contact, was about going to find the most famous killers in history from around the world and trying to see if you can find their ghosts. And so it's a different take. It was a new approach. He was telling, I know Hector's a legit guy, so if Hector's going to be in it, should be a good show. Dude, when they came out, Sci-Fi just shoved that show in and out. They just wanted it on TV and off. It's like they just decided ahead of time they weren't going to like that show.
Hmm.
So basically, 8 episodes were shown in a span of like 2 weeks. Like every other night, 2 episodes, like at a random hour. This show never got a shot. But I'm watching the show, and Hector don't even look like Hector because the way the show got edited.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, so it's kind of frustrating because I was like, Hector, I've seen you, I know what you do. They edited you to look like somebody else that you're not. And he's like, yeah, man, and so
It's
and
like
I don't want to,
they had wardrobe on this reality show. He had to
dude.
change clothes and stuff.
Well, I don't want to tell us out of school, but even after the show, he couldn't wear his cap a certain direction anymore because they told him he couldn't for like 6 months. So it just goes to show how crazy these shows are, and some of them could be really awesome, but just either politics of the network or the way it got edited could be the thing that makes the show go from great to not even succeeding past a month.
Yeah, no, that sucks that it's gotten that way because you think like of course you see the guys and they all like the jump scares and like, oh, did you see that kind of situation? You get that almost every promo. But like you said, it's more like network and producers who are just like, this is what we got to do to sell ads, and your show's gonna go like this, and you're gonna look like this. So it is hard. Like for you get to do it right. You got your own web series. You're doing it on your own terms. Whereas some people have to go, I mean, on a network or on a certain TV channel, they had to abide by their rules and kind of how they want the show to look like. I guess too. So it's
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
It's just interesting to see how that's all unfolded over the last like decade or so. However many shows have been around, and how you can tell some were, I guess, more legit than others, but really they're all on the same playing field to some degree when it comes to the production. So I just want to see what your thoughts on all those shows are as the Dead Explorer is building and getting bigger. So real quick, where can people find if they want to do a quick subscribe to the Dead Explorer? Where can they go real quick?
Yeah, well, the best way to keep up with Dead Explorer on YouTube is to just search Dead Explorer, find it, hit subscribe, and then there's a little bell. If you click on that, it'll give you notifications when new videos come out. And so season 6 comes out August 5th. I'm really excited because we're going back to Ohio State Reformatory. We've already filmed some of this stuff, and it's coming out starting, this Saturday. And we're also going to be doing some really cool stuff. I'm actually going out to LA this week. I'm going to be interviewing some of my filmmaker buddies who are making some really cool indie horror movies. So kind of, one of the reasons I'm really excited to be on your show, Carlos, is because, I have friends as a filmmaker that make indie horror movies inspired by the stuff from the 80s and the 90s. And we're actually going to be featuring them and their films more this year. So this year, Dead Explorer is going to be bigger because we're going to be doing the investigations, but we're also going to be including some really cool stuff with movies and pop culture for people like me and like you, Carlos, who kind of just love the ghost hunting shows, but also love all this kind of fun, geeky stuff around it.
Exactly.
So, YouTube Dead Explorer and deadexplorer.com. Another great location to keep up, and all the social media posts or all the social media links are on the website as well.
Well, awesome. Well, everyone check that out. So they check out the new episode coming out this, you said this Saturday is when it comes out? It starts up again?
Yes, comes out August 5th, and leading up to August 5th, for those who are new to the show or for those who do know Dead Explorer but just haven't watched it in a while, we've been releasing these best stuff videos from each season. So for the rest of this week, leading up to August 5th, we're still got the best of seasons 3, 4, and 5 coming out. And, it's a really quick way in 5 minutes to see what's happened, each season of Dead Explorer and kind of get prepared or get caught up on what we're going to be doing this year.
Cool. Well, again, everyone go check that out. But we got a few more things to go over before we call it a day here. I want to go over some personal paranormal stories. Maybe not ones that you went on Dead Explorer, but ones that you've gone on that happened to you. Like the one I have for me when I was like about 5 or 6 years old. I remember when I woke up sunny morning. I woke up and I look at the edge of my bed. And it's just one of those quick blinks. You look up, and there's a shadow figure at the edge of my bed. And I remember getting so scared, like instantly I just kind of do that quick squeeze. Your eyes are so squinted, you're so squinting so hard. And it opened back up a few seconds later, and it was gone. And it's just one of those things, like I just could never explain it. And like the house would have some weird things going on in there, but I never saw anything. But that was like the only time that like it really like just like it showed itself to me, whatever it was. Because like you said, it was a dark shadow, kind of disfigured, but it was enough that like you knew it was like a person was just literally standing at the foot of my bed. I just remember just shaking me to my core, and I didn't even tell my family because I just knew they probably wouldn't believe me because of course being 5 or 6, who's gonna believe you? But luckily we moved away a few months later. But I just remember that one just really like kind of shaking me there for a while, especially when you're that young, 5 or 6 years old. So what about you? What's a good one, personal story for you?
Yeah, it definitely does correlate with, obviously with my experiences, being 5 or 6 in Mexico City in my grandparents' apartment, looking out the window and seeing that woman apparition, that paled woman's face looking through the window. And similar to yourself, I mean, I don't remember what anybody's reaction was to me telling that story. I'm pretty sure I ran out of there, and I think I told people that I seen it. And like you said, when you're 5 or 6, people just kind of dismiss you, like, sure, you saw that. The thing is that now that I've been doing this and I've met a lot of investigators, I've done investigations with dozens of different paranormal groups, and the one story that kind of seems to bind a lot of paranormal investigators is the same experience you had, Carlos, being young, being 4, 5, or 6, and seeing something. And there is a big belief or theory that when you're young and before the world's told you certain things are not possible, you're able to perceive things that as you become older, you just forget how to see or just choose not to see. So there, it is a belief that young children will see spirits more frequently than adults. and it's just something. It's a story I've heard over and over again.
Well, it's crazy too. Like you said, it's a common thing within the community, or at least people like you said, same age, 5 or 6. Which I like. It sounds logical that kids have a little bit more open perception when it comes to seeing things like that. Because I don't remember having too many experiences after that. I was real young. Before I was 10, I think I had maybe like a couple more, but I can hardly remember them. But yeah, it's just it is interesting. Like you said, it's common throughout the community that's similar age and things like that. So just kind of moving on for the last thing that I wanted to go over was kind of getting nostalgic now, was our paranormal movies and TV. Our favorite ones that we kind of grew up with or like to go back and watch here and there. So I'll kick it off with one of my favorite paranormal TV shows was Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack from 87 to 02. All those reenactments and the documentaries, like even hit the intro was like I would have to turn it down, or I couldn't watch the intro at home by myself just because it was so creepy. And just some of those cases that are unsolved, like it just as a kid it really threw me for a loop that some of these things weren't solved and that there could be a monster or a ghost out there somewhere. So I always liked Unsolved Mysteries. Did you watch it growing up? Was that part of your childhood?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, man. Robert Stack in that trench coat.
Oh yeah, every time.
That show was epic, and it's so funny you mentioned that because that's every once in a while I think of that show, and that was one of the shows that's that would share these kind of spooky stories with the nation growing up, and it's completely different than what it is now. They put all this production value into it, and Robert Stack is like this awesome dude. He's like a man's man. He's just manly, oh, yeah. And it's so funny how different it is now, versus a show like that. Twilight Zone was another great one. Obviously that's scripted stuff. And Tales from the Crypt. I think if you're gonna go more for scripted stuff, Tales from the Crypt is where I would go.
That intro got me every time. HBO late night every time.
The Crypt Keeper.
Mm-hmm. That laugh.
Yeah.
That's another one I have to turn down.
Oh yeah.
I don't want the other ghouls to know that I'm watching this.
It's so funny because my wife told me that the Crypt Keeper scared her, and I'm like, what? This guy, I thought he was hilarious. He actually his whole shtick was that he had a pun.
Oh, hello, creeps. It's me, your favorite holiday spirit, doing a little Cryptmas decorating. Yeah, kids these days with their long hair. You can't even tell the boils from the ghouls. And when they do want a cut, they go to one of those fancy salons like Jose Slaybear or the Dead Sassoon. It's enough to make you terror your hair out.
During every intro about something like, that's
pun.
ghoulish. Yeah, it's some dead pun. So to me, it was always hilarious. But I actually found out, and I don't know if you know this, but they're bringing him back. I don't remember which network they said it's coming. Do you know which network they're doing it?
Like M. Night Shyamalan's doing it or something like that.
Is that who it's doing? Oh, yeah. Okay.
So it could be like, I don't know, it could be TNT or it could be HBO. I don't think it's like HBO or anything like that, but yeah, it might be like on like a network TV. But I would, the way TV is made now, you might get away with some pretty cool stuff, especially M. Night. He's done pretty well for himself as of recent, some of the movies. So who knows? They had to bring the Crypt Keeper back, and they had to have that same intro that goes through the mansion, down the steps, and him popping out of that coffin. Like it has to be the same.
Yeah, no, and they had to keep it as a puppet because I think if they try to go the CGI route,
it wouldn't work.
It wouldn't be the same. Yeah.
No, I always thought the Crypt Keeper lived in my basement, so keeping the puppet it's gonna ruin other kids' lives for sure. So they have to do that. So Unsolved Mysteries was my first one. That was one of the better paranormal TV shows I watched. What was one of yours?
There was another one called, I want to say it was called Amazing Stories. And it wasn't as big as, Unsolved Mysteries, but it was kind of like the same thing. Those kind of stories. I think what happened is, once Unsolved Mysteries became big, they started kind of making these, copycat shows, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Once Robert Stack had that trench coat, it's hard to copy it.
Another cool one is not necessarily ghost stuff, but it is kind of like that World of the Strange was Ripley's Believe It or Not. Mm-hmm. So, they had the Ripley's Believe It. Yeah, even before Dean Cain, before Dean Cain, there was another one. So it was actually on the air a few times. And, it started off as a comic strip. So, you could find it in the Sunday Funnies. They would have a strip of Ripley's Believe It or Not. And actually, as a kid, we got to go to the Ripley's Museum in Dallas.
Oh, nice.
So
I think
it's
the only
really
one
cool.
I've been to is Branson, Missouri, where the building is like all like tilted. They have like
Oh, you've
the
been
way
to
they
that
built,
one?
yeah, the way they built the building is pretty cool. So
Oh,
yeah, I've
that's
only been to
cool.
that one, but I imagine, of course, they're all they have scattered different things throughout all the different ones they have.
Yeah, no, I think they'll have like their own angle, no pun intended, of what each one's famous for. So they'll have like some little catchy thing. The one in Dallas looks like a Taj Mahal.
Oh, okay, yeah, I
Yeah,
think they're all like I saw one in Orlando. I didn't go into it, but it was kind of looked like the Caesar's Palace type of thing, like the pillars and stuff like that, all tilted.
yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, it's cool. I do. Ripley's Believe It or Not is another good one that you just kind of get. It's like the freak show. You get to see the circus freak shows from back in the day or something like that they would have in their vault. So yeah, amazing stories. I do remember part of that. I think, like you said, it was just part of that, not knockoff, but just like sister shows to Unsolved Mysteries. Like Unsolved Mysteries was like the top of the hierarchy, and there's like an umbrella of a few other shows. And I think Amazing Stories fell into that one, but still a good show nonetheless. Going into the movies that I kind of always loved as a paranormal movie was The Frighteners.
Frank Bannister had a remarkable ability
Psychic investigator?
to communicate with the dead.
Okay, well, folks, I can do a clearance, but it's not going to be cheap. Although I do offer a 6-month guarantee.
With Michael
Okay.
J. Fox.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a kind of those underrated movies no one really talks about unless you're kind of like it's a cult classic to some regard in regards to horror, but like people just really it kind of didn't get the attention it deserved. Even like I think it came out in 98 or 99, and
Right.
Yeah, it was Michael J. Fox. I guess right before the Parkinson's really kicked in, so he still has a little bit of an acting career at that point in time, and also was directed by Peter Jackson, it's the last film he did before he went like 3 years of pre-production for Lord of the Rings. So it's just a great movie. I love the premise of it that Michael J. Fox character had the ability to talk to ghosts, but instead of like using it for good, he cons people into thinking their houses are haunted, which I just thought it was a great concept. And then the way it was executed, just the way the ghosts look, and some of the gore in it was pretty cool. Just because it's Peter Jackson, that's just his motto. So that's just one of them. Like The Frighteners is like I don't hear very many people talk about it, but those who are like horror fans or just kind of cult classic fans really enjoyed that one. Did you enjoy The Frighteners?
Yeah, I actually saw it in the movie theater,
Okay.
Carlos. I saw it in the movie theater, and I remember thinking, "Wow, this is so different." And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I just didn't really catch a big audience because it was so different. I don't think people were used to the kind of effects they had in that movie. It was so ahead of the time, and I think people just wanted to see Michael J. Fox play the good guy, and he was the good guy, obviously in the movie. But like you just described, he had a lot of character faults.
Yeah, it
he's
was a dark
like
guy.
a con artist. He's a con artist,
Mhm.
and even the way his hair's cut, and he just didn't look like Marty McFly. And I think people, Michael J. Fox was Alex Keaton. He was Martin, McFly. He was, America's, like the boy next door.
Mhm.
And in this movie, he just plays such a different character. I think he just threw people off.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I
I
think
love
so.
The Frighteners. It is definitely underrated, especially for the amazing video effects that they had at the time. And I think it's great that you mentioned that one, actually.
Yeah, and I just remember watching some of the behind the scenes. It's like they filmed the movie. It was not too long, a couple years after Back to the Future, and the sheriff in the movie, Michael J. Fox always had to refer to him in the movie, and they would show behind the scenes, and he'd always accidentally refer him to Doc. He was like Doc, Doc, and they're like, oh god, sorry, we gotta redo that. Sorry. It's like he will never live down the Marty McFly. So yeah, I always thought Michael J. Fox in Frighteners was great. So what's your next one?
Oh man, well I'm always been a big John Carpenter fan. In fact, even when I film Dead Explorer and kind of sometimes think about how to film some shots, my inspiration comes from John Carpenter. I love the way he would use those wide shots. Obviously, the thing.
I know I'm human. Some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's one.
The Thing is his most famous movie now, even though it bombed when it came out because it came up against E.T. And it didn't do very well in the movie theater because people wanted to see the nice alien. They didn't want to see the evil alien. So, E.T. killed it. But I think in retrospect, people realize how good The Thing is now. And E.T. personally, I never got into it, so I don't know why people liked it. But there are obviously some movies. He had his Apocalypse trilogy. So The Prince of Darkness and In the Mouth of Madness are the other two movies that are supposed to tie with The Thing as far as the end of the world. And I love Prince of Darkness. It came right after Big Trouble in Little China, so it has a lot of the same actors from Big Trouble in Little China. In fact, it has, I think, 2 or 3 from that movie. And, it's this movie where basically they discover the Antichrist in the bottom of this church. And the Antichrist is slowly coming out and taking over all the people who are locked inside this church trying to do this scientific experiment on it. So there's this big shtick on it about how it's based on physics and it's all science, and the Antichrist is a math formula. In a lot of ways, it kind of maybe try to be too big and too much and too deep, but it's still a really cool movie, and I love the way it got shot, because after Big Trouble in Little China and the way it flopped, and John Carpenter was like, I'm not going to do this big budget movies anymore. He came from Halloween being this indie director, so he got back to his indie roots, and the budget, which was much smaller, which meant he had to be way more creative about how he shot it to get the vibe and the feel of the movie, which is what I've always loved about his movies, is that minimalist style for the most bang for your buck, and the creepiness that he creates just going from what he puts in camera. So I'm a big John Carpenter fan. Prince of Darkness is great, and The Fog is another one of those 80s John Carpenter movies. It is a ghost movie that's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, The Thing was one of those that it took me a while to get into, but when I finally watched it, it's just like, it's such a great horror mystery. Like, you don't know who the thing is. Like, it's taking shape of anybody in the group, so you never know until they're doing the DNA check at the end. That's just this big reveal. So I just like one of those. And then the effects, the practical effects that went into the movie. If you watch one of the behind the scenes stuff, they're just so much detail and so much work. And when you look at it now, how old it is, and compared to some of the CGI and effects you see now to how good the Thing stuff holds up, it's uncomparable. So yeah, I agree. The Thing is awesome. It took me too long to actually come around to it, but when I did, I loved it. And what were the other 2 movies you said that are tied into it again?
Yeah, so they're not direct sequels, but they're spiritual sequels in the sense that they all deal with the apocalypse. So The Prince of Darkness and In the Mouth of Madness. And so In the Mouth of Madness is about about sanity and how that plays into effect. And Prince of Darkness, like I said, it was about the Antichrist, and so they're all about basically the central character being in a helpless situation, which is how it ties in with The Thing. Because even in The Thing, not spoiler alert, people don't know exactly how that movie ends either. So they all have the same. The thing that ties them in common is the main characters basically in this overwhelming situation where everything is against him. He has no control. He doesn't know who to trust, and it all always for all 3 ends up in pretty they all have loose endings that, if you really interpret them, seems like things just still don't work out. So, but they're awesome to check out. And I actually saw the Ghost of Mars, John Carpenter's movie from the 1990s.
The sequel to The Thing, wasn't it, with Ice Cube?
It would Ice Cube. It's funny. It actually was supposed to be Escape from Mars. So they actually wrote it to be the 3rd movie from Escape from New York.
Oh, that's right.
So
it's supposed to be that
Escape from New York,
trilogy.
Escape from LA, and then Escape from Mars. And so if you look at Ice Cube, he has like that sleeveless black
He's got the
shirt.
snake outfit.
Yeah,
on.
the snake. He has the snake, and he has the camel pants. So
Nice.
they kept him in the outfit. You should look up Ice Cube Snake Plissken on Google it. And you're like, I didn't realize it watching it. I was like, okay, maybe it subconsciously looked familiar, but then I was like, this movie is so funny because it's so bad, but it's actually good because it's bad. And so, I'm reading up on it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, he is dressed up like Snake Plissken. So
It'd be over the top if Ice Cube had a eye patch and feathered hair as well.
Well,
So-
Kurt Russell's so awesome, and he
Oh,
is
yeah.
in the thing. And I think that's one of who doesn't love Kurt Russell? He's awesome.
Oh, yeah, I love Kurt, and I'm glad that he's had a little bit of revival. Last couple of years, he's been in some good stuff like the Fast 8 series and Guardians of the Galaxy. So he's a Disney kid, true at heart. So he'll always be treated well by Disney some way or another. So yeah, no, The Thing, I definitely agree, is a solid one. It took me too long to get into. So for anybody who hasn't watched it, you have to. And don't try to spoil it before you watch it. Just see if you can figure out the mystery. But my last one that I want to go over is a nostalgic paranormal movie that I watched a lot as a kid. That I don't know how many people watched, was The Gate.
There is a passageway to the most evil place you can imagine. A gate behind which the demons wait to take back what was once theirs.
With Stephen Dorff. Have you watched that movie?
That doesn't ring a bell. What's it about?
It's with two boys accidentally release a bunch of demons after there's like a huge hole in their backyard from like a rocket or something like that, or some hole in their backyard, and then somehow summon these demons. And it's Stephen Dorff as like this 11-year-old kid. And it's basically like Goonies, but like a horror movie, because like there's this Stephen Dorff, his friend, and then Stephen Dorff's sister in the movie. So it's like there's trio of people who have to solve this mystery as to why these little demons are running around, and it's got some really like pretty messed up visuals in regards to like there's one cringe-worthy spot where like Stephen Dorff has like there's like an eyeball on his hand, like on his palm of his hand, and in order to like get it away, he picks up this shard of glass and just stabs his hand. And just like seeing that as a little kid, you're like even now my skin crawls. It's like watching someone stab their hand with a shard of glass. And I just remember that part, like just a couple other parts, like his friend opened the door thinking like I think it was like he thought it was his dead mom was there, kind of like in Master of the Universe where what's his name gets tricked into thinking her mom is there at the end. He goes to hug his mom and like ends up hugging like his dead dog. It's just like this is like weird visuals that are going on in this movie, but it just always stuck in my head. And it was just like The Thing, where it had a lot of practical effects that kind of stood out, because I think like ILM did some of the motion capture and some of the things that they had on there, which is pretty cool. And then they had like little figures running around. So it always stuck out to me with that movie. And like I said, not too many people I think have seen it, which is good and bad, I guess. But it's just one of those movies that, as a kid, it just stuck out to me.
That's really cool. It sounds like something that'd be worth checking out, especially with what you're describing with
It's
this
a
guy's
good
hand.
bad movie. It's good. It's a good and it's bad, but like it's entertaining enough that you'll enjoy it. And it's an
That's
80s
cool.
movie, so they're barely like 88 minutes long, so you're not wasting too much time by watching that. So The
Keeping
Gate
it
was
short and sweet, huh?
Yeah, so The Gate was my last one. What was your last one that you want to throw out there?
Oh, wow. Okay. So, when I think about horror movies as a kid growing up, obviously, Nightmare on Elm Street was the biggest thing when I was growing up. Freddy Krueger was just the man. Also really big into Hellraiser for a while there. I thought that was a really
Pinhead
interesting.
action?
Yeah, Pinhead. Yeah, what a great character. And, the whole mythology for a while was really interesting. But, as far as paranormal movies, I think the obviously Blair Witch Project.
The search of the 3 missing Montgomery College students continues in Frederick County tonight.
10 days and thousands of man-hours have been unable to produce any clues.
We have a few leads, a few other options we want to take advantage of, and just try to put together some pieces to this puzzle.
Do you believe the occult may be involved in the disappearance of your son?
I'm so scared.
When that came out, was a really awesome movie. Just the whole, people now think of Lost Tapes as, just really either you hate or you love it genre.
Yeah, it's almost like a gimmicky thing now, but when, like you said, Blair Witch did it, like the first ones.
Yeah, they were the first ones. And, you know, I mean, this is when the internet was brand new, too. I mean, obviously the internet had been around, but, like, this is when people were finally really getting onto it for the first time. And so, you know, they had this great viral marketing campaign where they made it seem like this was real. And there were people who left that movie still thinking that this was lost footage from a real, you know, from a real people who got lost in the woods searching for, you know, the Blair Witch. And so I love that movie because I just love the fact that it got done for so cheap. Again, kind of going back to the Dark Carpenter thing. I love when people can create really creepy atmospheres just using, you know, with what they have. I love that whole indie approach. Mm-hmm. I love that it's not heavy on CGI. You talk about practical effects and how powerful they are 20, 30 years later. I just love that whole grassroots approach it because really that's what makes you feel like it could be real. You know, not this CGI stuff. Just they're like when you see someone carrying, you're like, I can believe that could be in the room next door, or that could be in the backyard. When it really sucks you in because it feels like it could happen. And I think Blair Witch, even though it's not ghost, but you know, it's another kind of urban legend. The Blair Witch is another really cool movie from the '90s that you know, obviously people really do appreciate. I think people always have because of the way it was so successful. For an indie movie, but I think people still need to go back and watch it from time to time just to appreciate how it was made.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those. It was atmospheric, like you said. It's not like heavy on jump scares or like. I just remember one of the craziest parts in the movie was not even the jump scares when like all those hands start touching the tent when they're inside of it. Like that part, like just it floored me. Like when the movie came out, I think I was like 14, 15 years old. So like if I'm still in that stage, I'm like, oh my god, this is kind of freaky. And like like you said, atmospheric. Like I myself, like the internet was still fairly new, so like you couldn't just Google and like get the Wikipedia backstory on the production of Blair Witch. Like you kind of had to take it for what it was. Like, is this real? Like, you had to kind of find out word of mouth. Was this a real situation? Like, what's going on? And so by the end of the movie, like I was freaked out. Like I was legitimately freaked out by the end of the movie. I was like, man, like they did it. Like I didn't know what to think. It's kind of like with Paranormal Activity, the first one. You're like, I just like this is new. Like I just don't. They took a new angle to horror, and I just don't know how to think. I don't know how to adjust right now. But the Blair Witch definitely was like that first, found footage that before the found footage kind of got gimmicky. They are the ones who set the template for the found footage stuff because they did it so well, and it holds up, like you said, to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because you actually, I think the way you described it, you leave not knowing what to make of it, which is why I think has such a powerful effect. How it's so rare you go to a movie and you leave and you just think about it and think about it and think about it. Like, how do I feel? What is it? And when a movie can do that, I think that's when it's at its ultimate, because it's not just something you see, it's something you experience, it's something that your mind wants to, think about over and over again. And I love it when you see a movie like that. It's like the best feeling.
Yeah, I think people are thinking that way for the Emoji Movie this week, but not in a good way. I think they're walking like, what the hell did I just watch? God damn it.
That was Alien Covenant for me. After Alien Covenant, I left and I was like, oh my gosh, was that really that bad? And I wanted to like it, and I was starting to think in my head, okay, was it good? Is it possibly that it was good? I was like, no, it was bad.
No, you're right. I was the same exact way. I went in because I did all the Prometheus theories and tried to connect everything, and then they showed Prometheus. I was like, they just cut like half of this stuff out that connected the stories. And yeah, you're right. It was, I didn't know what to think. There's parts of it I really liked, and parts of it was like, this is the same guy who made the last movie. So yeah, Alien Covenant is definitely a coin toss to me at this point. Hopefully they have some bonus features or scenes when the Blu-ray comes out to kind of explain some of the nonsense that went on in that movie. But yeah, like you said, Blair Witch is definitely a solid movie. If you can watch it, I would recommend watching it on VHS. I feel like that's really the only way to watch that movie is on VHS. So go to your local thrift store, garage sale, snag a VCR, and watch Blair Witch on VHS. But that was everything I wanted to go over, Alejandro. I appreciate you again taking the time to come on the podcast tonight. I know you're getting ready for the next season of Dead Explorers Season 6. So again, tell everybody where they can find you and when the next episode's coming out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So people just go YouTube, go search The Explorer and hit subscribe, and then you get a notification whenever the videos come out. And then theexplorer.com is a great way to keep track behind the scenes, and also all the social media links are there. So I really hope you guys check it out.
Cool. Yeah, again, everybody keep an eye out, because like I said, the new season's coming out. He's gonna be pumping out some of those awesome videos. Go check out those top 5 videos as well. Don't watch them in the dark. I recommend don't watch them in the dark. So again, thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of the Be Kind and Rewind podcast. Please subscribe, follow, like, and rate the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker, and YouTube. And also, you can find my episodes and other stellar podcasts on the Poop Culture Network website at poopculture.com. Again, that is poopculture.com. So thanks everybody, and be excellent to each other.